Who is Kemi Badenoch? Is she a servant of white supremacy, with little time for the UK's black consciousness movement, as some on the left would have you believe? Is she a political rookie with a mountain to climb, as Theo Bertram, a former Labour advisor to Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, suggested this week? Taking to social media, Bertram's instant review of the new Conservative leader's performance at last Wednesday's Prime Minister's questions was sobering. "Badenoch is still learning at PMQs," he thundered. "I am sure she will get better." And so it begins. The clearly talented and charismatic Badenoch, who entered Parliament in 2017 and was a minister for only 3 years, is now under scrutiny like never before. Her every slip, misstep and mistake will be seized upon, scrutinized and interpreted by friend and foe alike. And if Badenoch hoped for a honeymoon period, to have the time to find her feet in her new role, she knows better now. This week, the New Statesman magazine acknowledged her rhetorical skills but derided Badenoch's natural confrontational style, criticizing the Conservative leader for being more interested in finding culture war issues to scrap over than engaging with the real lives of voters. Whilst the New Statesman was outing itself as no fan of the Tories' latest star, the Guardian newspaper was serving notice of the likely Liberal attack on Kemikaze Badenoch. Columnist John Grace dismissed Badenoch as a narcissist for the brittleness of her replies at the inquiry into the post office scandal. Grace summoned all the authority of an amateur psychologist to declare that Badenoch is incapable of empathy for other people, before offering his highly subjective conclusion that the person Badenoch dislikes the most is herself. Strong stuff indeed, but fellow Guardian columnist Tom Baldwin was not to be outdone by his fellow scribbler in the newspaper's Badenoch bashing stakes. Baldwin put on the record his first professional encounter with the Tory leader, and it was withering. Writing in Wednesday's Guardian, Baldwin snorted, "The only time I have met Kemi Badenoch was in a television studio a few months ago, when she shamed me into a stumbling apology. We were part of a panel discussing her plan to bar transgender people from entering female-only spaces." The then Equalities Minister had, for once, gone out of her way to emphasize the need for a reasoned debate on this bitterly contested issue. So how, I asked, could she then justify a Conservative advert that day claiming Keir Starmer didn't know what a woman is? Badenoch replied with words that would chill the blood of anyone with vaguely progressive instincts. "Please don't point at me like that, I find it unnecessarily aggressive." Fair enough, middle-aged white men like me really should have learned by now to keep their fingers under control. My purpose in recalling this slightly painful experience now is because there has been some excited chatter that the forthright new Tory leader will cause similar discomfort for Starmer. Even though the Prime Minister has never really been the finger-jabbing type, his new opponent is not averse to using her gender and ethnicity to invalidate other opinions, in a fashion more often associated with the woke identity politics she usually professes to despise. Baldwin may stand accused of exaggeration, but there is some truth to his lament that Badenoch is willing to use her race when necessary to shut down criticism. Her default position on blackness is to claim that it has a minimal impact on her life. A Conservative leader can say nothing else, even though the 44-year-old owes her current position to the justice of the human rights struggle waged by Black Britons over more than 70 years. That said, it is also true that Badenoch would not have climbed to the top of the Tory party's greasy pole if she had allowed herself to be influenced too greatly by the sheer scale and depth of Britain's anti-blackness. When Badenoch became the Tories' new leader and the first black woman to head a major British political party, she was keen to downplay her historic achievement. "It shows my country and party are places where it doesn't matter who you are, or what you look like," she said. "It's about what the offer is." Badenoch's comments were in keeping with her stance at this year's party conference. There, she said that she was somebody who wants the color of her skin to be no more significant than the color of her hair, or the color of her eyes. The right-wing appropriation of a single phrase from the 1963 speech given by the revered Dr. Martin Luther King in Washington is now one of our more scandalous memes. Badenoch has been nodding and winking at this shameless reduction of the slain civil rights leader from the moment she came to public attention. At the Conservative Party conference in October 2023, Badenoch revealed that she tells her children that Britain is the best country in the world to be black because it's a country that sees people, not labels. Badenoch has dismissed as a scam calls for reparations for slavery and earned the adoration of the Tory press by opposing the teaching in schools of critical race theory, which claims that racial bias is baked into Western institutions. So, in the phrase of our times, Badenoch just doesn't believe that race is where the line is drawn. Yet, rewind some 14 years and Badenoch was very much leaning into political blackness in her pitch to constituency voters. Kemi Badenoch, then the 2010 prospective Conservative candidate for Dulwich and West Norwood, put her ethnicity front and center in her campaign to win the local Nigerian vote. Sounding more like a British Al Sharpton, candidate Badenoch in a communiqué to voters, declared that choosing her would be a chance to have someone with real influence over British-Nigerian relationships. It will not be about personal gain, she declared. Badenoch may have had a Damascene conversion in the years since her Dulwich adventure and stopped her ethno-nationalist cosplay upon being elected to Parliament, but to many observers, she was back using race and gender as a defensive shield when taking umbrage at criticism from the actor David Tennant. Last June, Badenoch was criticized for her views on trans rights by Tennant, who wished aloud that she would, in his words, just shut up. Badenoch's reply was forthright. "I will not shut up," she said. "I will not be silenced by men who prioritize applause from Stonewall over the safety of women and girls." A rich, lefty, white male celebrity so blinded by ideology he can't see the optics of attacking the only black woman in government by calling publicly for my existence to end. Perhaps, Badenoch did not slip out of character when admonishing the lefty actor, but instead gave evidence of the political wiles and opportunism that the North West Essex MP will need if she is to have any chance of succeeding as Britain's opposition leader. The job is a thankless task, as Badenoch must now recognize. She may hope to score points and emerge the winner in the weekly Keir versus Kemi clash at Prime Minister's questions. She will also be expected to harry effectively the Labour government when it stumbles, but with a possible 5 years to go before the next general election, all Badenoch can do is hope that events are as favourable to her as they were for the last opposition leader. After all, Sir Keir Starmer surely owes his landslide general election victory in great part to the caddish Boris Johnson and the clueless Liz Truss. In the meantime, Badenoch faces the grueling task of charming the party faithful, whilst marshalling her 121 Conservative MPs behind her programme and maintaining the interest of the public. For that, Badenoch will need Britain's right-wing press to remain staunchly in her corner. The Sun newspaper hailed Badenoch's election victory as a reward for her fierce intelligence, courage, and firm principles, rarely seen since Maggie Thatcher. The sister Sunday Sun described Badenoch as a talented and principled politician. Her promotion to party leader was a bold and ambitious appointment, according to the newspaper's editorial, which also viewed the new Tory leader as a symbol, not just of the new party but of New Britain. Badenoch's ability to upset the blob, as the Daily Mail's Quentin Letts describes it, is further evidence that she is off to a good start, as far as the country's right-wing media is concerned. Partisan newspapers were also quick to trumpet the so-called Badenoch bounce that has seen a rise in the Conservative Party's poll ratings in the days since the new leader was elected. The bump is a paltry 3 points, hardly a reason to uncork the champagne, but after years of dismal poll results, any opinion survey good news is to be welcomed at Conservative Central Office. And there, Tory strategists must hope that this promising start will continue, as the public gets to know better the real Kemi. Will she be cemented in the popular mind as a sharp-witted, pugnacious leader who stands up for Conservative principles? Will she be seen as a Nigeria-raised patriot, at one with British values? Is Badenoch destined to be remembered as a psychologically fragile narcissist, who abhors criticism, a thin-skinned hypocrite who uses race and gender to silence her critics, or a cunning political operative with a clear-eyed plan to beat the Liberals at their own game and take her party back into power? These are questions for another podcast. Just as the former U.S. First Lady Michelle Obama became a target for dog-whistle media attacks, hinting at disgraceful stereotypes about dark-skinned black women, so Badenoch should not allow the current media fawning to blind her to the fact that she will soon be the subject of intense political coverage, not seen in Britain since the lampooning of Neil Kinnock, some 40 years ago. On this occasion, the right-wing press may not lead the forensic media bullying from the front, but if Badenoch thinks she can take for granted the support of the Daily Mail, the Telegraph and GB News, she should have a word with Liz Truss. Badenoch's intelligence, her grip of events, her political antennae and yes, her looks, are certain to become 24/7 UK media talking points. Whilst Badenoch appears confident in her own abilities and may wish to remain in charge of her own image, it may be that this positive sense of self comes into conflict with the advice of party consultants, whose job it is to tell her what works well with voters. As even the hapless Liz Truss figured out, blue suits always play well with older conservatives, who have Margaret Thatcher circa 1983 burned into their memories. Badenoch's TV interview with the BBC's Laura Quinsberg, filmed a day after her coronation, went reasonably well, but Badenoch's staff may have noted the mischievous camera work, which continued to record Badenoch from a somewhat unflattering angle, and then set the Tory leader against the prim, upright and trouser-suited Chancellor Rachel Reeves. Was Badenoch just in relaxed mode, enjoying her robust exchange with Quinsberg, or was she slouching? The party's image advisors can do nothing about Badenoch's toothy smile, and in Britain, such an obvious aesthetic change to her dentistry would be frowned upon. But it will be interesting to see how long they allow Badenoch to wear thick spectacles in public. Will they let her leave her hair untied, or wear dresses that barely skirt the knee? Bearing in mind the ludicrous 2014 row over Barack Obama's tan suit, which sections of the American media deemed unpresidential for an August conference on the fight against terrorism, Badenoch would be wise to remember that high-profile black politicians rarely receive the benefit of the doubt. Thanks for listening to this podcast. We'll be back.